Oh my gosh, tremendous. And that is how I've come to find out who I am. Very interesting to me. It says, in many instances we find that though the harm done others has not been great, the emotional harm we have done ourselves has. Otherwise we wouldn't change at all. If we weren't left with the residual of that, we would never change. Very deep, sometimes quite forgotten, damaging emotional conflicts persist below the level of consciousness. That's why when I did that family inventory, I learned about perception and how I had perceived things, and that way back there I still believed some of those very old ideas. At the time of these occurrences, they may actually have given our emotions violent twists, which have since discolored our personalities and altered our lives for the worst. No question. While the purpose of making one restitution to others is paramount, two, it is equally necessary that we extricate from an examination of our personal relations every bit of information about ourselves and our fundamental difficulties that we can. You know, it took me a long time before I saw in this step, the 8th step, I was so busy about you and making amends to you that I didn't really read that it was all about what does it mean to me? What has it left me with? What do I have to do? How do I address it from my own point of view? What are my fundamental difficulties? What harm have I done to myself? I used to think that was a very selfish kind of way to look at things until I realized that until I can stand in my own light, then you are not safe with me. And the greatest gift I can give you is to have some balance and knowledge and understanding of myself. That's the greatest gift I can give you. You will be the safest you will ever be with me when I stand beside my God. You are at risk when I am by myself. Since defective relations with other human beings have nearly always been the immediate cause of our woes, including our alcoholism, no field of investigation could yield more satisfying and valuable rewards than this one. Calm, thoughtful reflection upon personal relations can deepen our insight. We can go far beyond those things which were superficially wrong with us to see those flaws which were basic flaws which sometimes were responsible for the whole pattern of our lives. Thoroughness we have found will pay. I mean, that is such a huge statement because the pattern of our lives includes people that we love, marry, associate with, become friends with. That is the pattern of our lives. It affects a lot of people. To define, and then they go on to talk about harm. It's very important to know what the word harm means if you have any intention of having personal relationships with anybody and you intend to make an amend so that you do not harm them. To define the word harm in a practical way, we might call it the result of instincts in collision. You know, those old instincts from yesterday. Social instincts, security instincts, and sexual instincts. You know, I can't help but always see little shamrocks when I see those three things. And social, security, instincts, little shamrock. And another little shamrock of physical and emotional and spiritual. And then the great shamrock of God, ourselves, and other people. And AA and meetings in God. I mean, you can't pluck one of those little leaves off. It just won't work. All those, so many things, probably starting with the Trinity, came in these threes. And I like this too, where it says that these instincts in collision that we talked about at length yesterday, which cause physical, mental, and emotional or spiritual damage. I never really knew until a few years ago that I could cause spiritual damage to somebody. You know, mess up their life enough so that they go absolutely mad. They cut their own light off. I've just caused them spiritual damage. So what's the greatest gift you can give somebody? The opportunity not to cut off their own light. And not only that, to double the energy by sharing with your light. If we lie or cheat, talked about lying yesterday, we deprive others not only of their worldly goods, but of their emotional security and peace of mind. Oh, that's a huge thing they just said here. It made me a lot more respectful of people's time, people's money, people's energy. Made me nicer. And then it talks about what will happen to you if you continue to do that and don't think about the other people. You'll be irritable, critical, impatient, humorless, dominating, wallow in depression. I mean, you know, really nice things. And this is having carefully surveyed this whole area of human relations and having decided exactly what personality traits in us injured and disturbed others, we can now commence to ransack memory for the people to whom we have given offense. Then, as year by year, we walk back through our lives. It was so wonderful when I started to do the 8th step and walk back through my life from today, as opposed to the first way I used to do it, which was from the beginning when I was born, forward. Now I go from here, because this is where I live. In this 24 hours, there is no more world for me. And then I look back, and I go back, as from today. It was really a wonderful word. Back through our lives as far as memory will reach. I also decided that if my memory didn't immediately get there, I was not going to struggle and force it to go. It sure makes inventory and the process of self-examination, which is powerful. Self-examination, prayer, and meditation is the whole secret to peace, but it just made it easier not to struggle. If I can't remember something, it's not bothering me. I may remember it tomorrow. Fine, I'll add it. That's why I don't use any guides or 67 pages of this guy's guide and that book and how to... I just stand still or sit still and see what's on my mind and jot it down. Then as year by year we walk back through our lives, as far as memory will reach, we shall be bound to construct a long list of people who have, or to some extent or another, been affected. We shall want to hold ourselves to the course of admitting the things we have done, meanwhile forgiving the wrongs done us, real or fancied. We talked yesterday about real or imagined. Same thing. You know, they used to say when I first got sober that you give up, clean up, make up, and grow up. We should avoid extreme judgments, both of ourselves and others involved, and we must not exaggerate our defects or theirs. I mean, have you ever gone to make an amend, and you're talking about the defective character that you have, and you get so carried away that you make it out to be 10 times worse than the event that even happened, because you just feel good about yourself and your ability to communicate. Then you have to go back and make an amend and say half that crap didn't even happen. It is the beginning of the end of isolation from our fellows and from God. You know, what I ended up doing over the years is learning how to amend my hows, How did I hurt or harm other people? I never, ever tell anybody anything that will harm them. It's the old saying, never give anyone information that will not serve them. It is harmful to tell anyone anything that will not serve them. If you cannot be of service with what you say, don't say anything. I had to amend my negative thinking. I had to amend my level of honesty with others. I had to look at words that I didn't even understand, like envy and jealousy and insecurity. And then there's a saying that I'd rather say no and be guilty than yes and be angry. And then we go on to step 9, where we talk about boundaries for ourselves and having choices. Jane, may I borrow that book for a minute? I have to borrow an old 12 and 12, because before we get to 9, it's one of the few times in the book that I really went out of my way to look up words so that I would understand them, because I somewhat had to understand what they were talking about so that I could be as thorough as possible and not have my own definition of what I thought a word meant. Because in step 9 it says, make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except to do so with injure them or others. And the first couple of words in this little baby paragraph were full of things I truly didn't understand. It said good judgment, a careful sense of timing, courage, and prudence. These were the qualities we shall need when we take step 9. I thought, wow, what do they mean? So I looked up the word judgment, a mental ability to perceive and distinguish the relationship between two objects. It required me to ask questions of God so that I could help determine what the differences were. Sound, reasonable decision or evaluation, an assertion of something believed. Well, I had come to believe a lot. So I knew that I would begin to understand the word judgment. But I wasn't sure what prudence meant. I didn't know that for me it would come to mean the ability to pause. Caution, but also the capacity for judging in advance the probable results of one's actions. You know the old sign on the walls years ago, think, think, think. Prudence, wise in handling practical matters. Careful in regards to one's own interests, circumspect, careful about one's conduct. Then I understood why you needed judgment and prudence before you made an amend. And courage, the state or quality of mind or spirit that enables one to face danger with self-possession, confidence, and resolution. You've got to be really prepared before you make an amend. And then it says, there was also in this particular dictionary, of course there's millions of them, they had referred to the word bravery under courage. And I thought, well, I'll just look it up just for the hell of it. Bravery, admirable human action in difficult circumstances. Brave, associated with an innate quality. And then I thought, what do they mean by innate quality? Possessed at birth or belonging by nature. And I fully understood the nature of my wrongs, what it meant to be restored, what it meant to pause in the 10th step, and that the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous were so huge and so powerful. And so big that they could have that much information in them in such simple words that even I could begin to apply them. So, good judgment, a careful sense of timing, courage, and prudence. These are the qualities we shall need when we take step 9. And I wondered to myself, I said to Duke once, you never told me I needed all that stuff before I went out and made all those amends. He said, you wouldn't have understood what the hell it meant. Well, you're absolutely right. Get to that when you're ready. More will be revealed. It says, after we've made a list of the people we have harmed, and now don't forget now, after you're sober for a while, harm comes by judgment, by omission, by envy, by expectation. Having reflected carefully upon each instance, we have tried to possess ourselves of the right attitude in which to proceed. So the first thing we have to do is have the right attitude ourselves. Amazing amount of work before you ever make an amend. Good thing we didn't know this at the beginning. And then they tell you to deal with them as soon as possible. Sometimes you can only make partial restitution. In other cases, you have to defer them. And in some cases, you will not be able to make personal contact at all. I like that it says personal contact, because that doesn't mean that you can't make spiritual contact. Just because somebody's gone on to another place that you can't see doesn't mean you can't make the amend. Almost always we want to go further and admit other defects that have made us hard to live with. While we may be quite willing to reveal the very worst, we must be sure to remember that we cannot buy our own peace at the expense of others. So important. Sometimes what you say is more important in the amend than what you don't say is more important than what you say. What you're willing to not say. It also says just before that good judgment will suggest that we ought to take our time, that pause. But even in these cases we may need to use a little more discretion than we did with the family, and they're talking about various things you can read later. We may not want to say anything for several weeks or longer. First, we will wish to be reasonably certain that we are on the AA beam. A lot of work goes into making an amends, so we should probably be on the AA beam. Then we are ready to go to these people to tell them what AA is and what we are trying to do. What is our motive in making that amend? Anybody that you've ever hurt is going to want to know, what the hell is your motive in making this amend to me? They don't think you're a nice person. They're not going to assume that. And you really probably wouldn't be making the amend if it weren't for the fact that you were applying the AA program. So you might as well tell them right up front, I have to do this for my own peace of mind. If you choose to go ahead, perhaps they're alcoholic, it might not hurt to say, and I need this peace of mind so that I don't have to drink again. And I need to have a closer conscious contact with this God because it's bigger than scotch and I need to have that. And if I don't clean this act up with you, why, it could grow. And it's getting in the way. And that's my motive in talking to you. And that's the truth. Against this background, we can freely admit the damage we have done and make our apologies. We can pay or promise to pay whatever obligations, financial or otherwise, we owe. The generous response of most people to such quiet sincerity. Said earlier yesterday that humility underlies all steps. That is humility, quiet sincerity, will astonish us. And then they go on to talk about some of the things that could throw you a little off balance, which you can read about. As soon as we begin to feel confident in our new way of life, and if we've begun by our behavior first, and our example, to convince those about us that we are indeed changing for the better, it is usually safe to talk in complete frankness with those who have been seriously affected, even those who may be only a little or not at all aware of what we have done to them. The only exceptions we will make will be cases where disclosure could cause actual harm. They're really careful about that here. Okay. And they tell you to lay your cards on the table. We needn't wallow in excessive remorse before those we have harmed, but amends at this level should always be forthright and generous. There can only be one consideration which should qualify our desire for complete disclosure of the damage we have done. That will arise in the occasional situation where to make a full revelation would seriously harm the other to whom we are making amends. Or quite as important, other people. Really important. Repeat it all the time. Even in those cases where such a matter must be discussed, let's try to avoid harming third parties. It does not lighten our burden when we recklessly make the crosses of others heavier. Are we going to be so rigidly righteous about making amends that we don't care what happens to the family or the home? I mean, these are the cases where the people say, well, you go right away, write this thing out, you go down to the judge and you say, hey, I committed 15 murder, whatever you did. And they're going to throw your ass right in jail. Now, is that harmful to your family and kids? You're damn right it is. You better go talk to them. You have to have personal relations and right relationships with everybody. Balance that all out. You talk to your spiritual advisor, your sponsor, whoever it is, and then you make that decision. You don't make that decision with righteous indignation that you're a terrific person, because that's a dishonest thing to do. And you're going to end up having to make an amend to yourself later on. It's going to take you years to undo that damage to the people. So I don't agree, and that's my experience on AA with some of these things, and that's what my responsibility, whether I like it or not, I'm willing to take the flak for it, to state those kind of things. Meanwhile, do we lay the matter before our sponsor, spiritual advisor, earnestly asking God's help and guidance? I mean, this asking God is so consistent throughout this thing, as you know from yesterday. Ask. After, quote, sponsor, friend, advisor, just anybody gives me advice, no matter what it is, I never take action until I ask God. I always take it, I just two things. I never go anywhere I can't bring God, and I never do anything I don't ask. And I don't answer it, I just ask. And I let it go. If I'm supposed to be there, go there, it will happen. And if I am not, everything I've ever wanted to do in my life will not cause that to happen. And I believe that. I believe that that's the ability to operate in conscious contact with my God and the miracle of my life. Is that upon asking, I will then go ahead and make a decision. If it is the right decision for me and my God, then my will and the power of God will get me there. And if it is the wrong decision, I will not get there. Planes will crash, mountains will fall down, I will not get where I'm going. So I never worry about doing anything wrong, because I don't believe I can do anything wrong. I just don't believe it. I believe I can have an experience that it feels like it's wrong. But it's nothing more than another experience that's going to lead me there, and a few years from now I'm going to look back and I'm going to realize that all those things I thought were wrong were right, in fact, perfectly right. Meanwhile, resolving to do the right thing when it becomes clear. There's that pause thing again. When it becomes clear, not before, cost what it may. Of course, there is no pat answer which can fit all such dilemmas, but all of them do require complete willingness to make amends as fast and as far as may be possible in any given set of conditions. Above all, we should try to be absolutely sure that we are not delaying because we are afraid. That's why you need the fifth step and somebody to walk this through with you so that you're not afraid and that they can help you and make you feel less afraid. For the readiness to take the full consequences of our past acts and the responsibility for the well-being of others at the same time is the very spirit of Step 9. So it's two parts to Step 9, full consequence of our past acts, and 2, the responsibility for the well-being of others, the person that we have just made the amend to. It requires compassion, brotherly love, balance and justice. It balances our past with our current. The The minute you have finished your amends, you are current in the day. The 24 hours belong to you. You own every single solitary second. You have not mortgaged anything. You're paid off. You're free. I also looked up the word spirit, since it said in the very spirit of step 9, just so I was sure. And it says real sense of significance of something, like in the spirit of the law. The vital principle or animating force traditionally believed to be within living human beings. And then I realized that there it is again, that being restored that they keep promising us in the second step, came to believe that power greater than ourselves would restore us. We're being restored all the time. And it was in this step 8 and 9 that I had to really, really understand the Al-Anon principle of to release with love. You know, there's information available to all of us from all these programs. And from Al-Anon, that release with love concept is fantastic. And that's what it means right here. That we make that amend no matter what. We may not get back what we want. And to release with love. And it was Carl Jung that made the statement, to watch is not to love. To watch is not to love. Sometimes it's better to look away, walk away. To watch is not to love. People must do their own experience. You can't do anything about it. I have made more amends to my sister about my attitude in trying to save her life. Eight and 9. Step 10, step of perseverance. Well, now if you've done 8 and 9, 1 through 7, my God, you're current. You're very, very current. And all it requires now is to stay current. It is no surprise to me that the 10th step is here. It is no surprise that it's the step of the greatest pause of all. It's no surprise that it's the step that says stop. Take a moment. You know, practically after every step that we have read, in some simple way they will tell you to, stop, rest a little. They don't tell you after 9 to do that, because you're going right to the biggest pause of all. The 10th step. It's a restful place in my sobriety. The place that is the hardest for me to stay. In the place of nothing. Because really all you're doing in the 10th step is continuing to take personal inventory. When you're wrong, probably admitting it. It's just hitting back the balls. There is nothing else going on here. Hitting back the balls, and I'm by myself in the space. Doing nothing is the greatest, most difficult spiritual experience of my entire sobriety. It's been as hard as the first few weeks of not drinking. Having to keep myself pinned into this world of sobriety. And now having to keep myself pinned into this world of wanting to respond, wanting to react, and do nothing until I feel something, until God comes along. Extraordinary. We're powerless, we get the power, we make the decision to get that power, we say, what's in the way, as we discussed yesterday. And you discuss what's in the way with somebody else, you can really narrow that down, and then you say, I accept that, and immediately the humility comes in and you ask for help, and then you see who did you harm along the way when that little moment of insanity may have been going on, and then you take care of that, and then you're back to pausing again. The breath before you do it the next time. Step 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. This is fantastic, this stuff in here. Because it says, as we work the first 9 steps, those internal new ideas now. You see, the 12 steps are brand new ideas. They're going to replace all those old ideas that you've been functioning with. As we work the first 9 steps, we prepare ourselves for the adventure of a new life. Now, regrettably, it says that you're preparing yourself for this adventure, that you're really not having it in the first 9 steps. You just think it's an adventure because it's frightening. But you're really just preparing. You're preparing for much, much more. Can you imagine? But when we approach step 10, we commence to put our AA way of living to practical use, day by day. One day at a time, day by day. Because when they told me I could not drink again for the rest of my life, they told me how you do that is one day at a time. Day by day. And I now believe that what I am being told here as how I walk the spiritual path one step at a time is day by day. In fair weather or foul. Then comes the acid test. Can we stay sober? Can we stay sober, keep an emotional balance, and live to good purpose under all conditions? Now, that's really what we're trying to do. The minute you're sober, because we're already recovered by the time we're reading the 12 and 12, as you know from yesterday. Can we stay sober? You know, always qualify stay sober with do not drink, just in case there's somebody out there. And there is. And to keep an emotional balance, step 2, our sanity is being restored. And to live in good purpose is step 12, because you've had the spiritual awakening and something to give. A continuous look at our assets and liabilities and the real desire to learn and grow by this means. You know, the old uncover, discover, discard. That's really what they're saying here. Are necessities for us. Now, he's warming up now. Bill's no longer telling you these are suggestions you might want to think about. He's telling you it's necessary. If you've already gotten to this step, you know it's necessary. For the wise have always known that no one can make much of his life until self-searching, step 4, becomes a regular habit, until he is able to admit, step 5, and accept, step 6, what he finds, and until he patiently and persistently tries to correct what is wrong, 8 and 9. One paragraph piled full of steps. Then they talk about living today, and they call it for the sober people. That is the emotional hangover, the direct result of yesterday's and sometimes today's excesses of negative emotion, anger, fear, jealousy, and the like. Can't imagine there's one of you in this room who have not had an emotional hangover. It requires an admission, step 5, and corrections of the errors now. They put that now in italics. They put that now in italics because they don't have to gently lead you through anymore. They're telling you now, this minute, stop, 6 and 7, take contrary action, become entirely ready now, stop right now. You've got that negative emotion, that negative thought that's going to build up. You want that emotional hangover to stop right now. When this is done, we are ready to leave it behind us. Not beside us, behind us. When our inventory is carefully taken, and this is the inventory you're taking in a second. This is the inventory now after 10. This is the inventory during 10. This is the inventory going powerless. I need some power. I have to make the decision right now to get that power. What the hell is the fear that's motivating me? Should I talk to somebody? Is there somebody to talk to ask about this? I will take contrary action and accept that I'm still doing it. God help me. Did I hurt you, by the way, while I was doing that? Okay, I'm back. That's as fast as it is. Those are the steps. They become part of you. When an inventory is carefully taken, and that's the inventory they're talking about in the 10th step, 1 through 9, immediately, like that. When an inventory is carefully taken and we have made peace with ourselves, which is acceptance, we're back to who we are. Now, in today, the minute you've done those 9 steps, you're at peace with yourself, you're accepting yourself, the good, the bad, the indifferent. You're sitting here, you're perfectly content that you're here, you're grateful that you're here. The conviction follows that tomorrow's challenges can be met. You know it's going to be okay. You can get back out there and fight the valiant fight one more time, because you now have a walk-around step. You're walking around, they call it the walk-around step, the current step, the 10th step, the walk-around step. Steps you're walking around with, and you go, oh. The minute you go, oh, that's it, that's 10, something's gone down. You better take an inventory. What happened? What are you powerless over that's got you to that, oh. If you don't, that will become so unmanageable, you will be insane really shortly. You'll have to do it anyway. And then they talk about the different kind of inventories. You take spot inventories, check inventories at the end of the day, whatever, your progress from the last time, semi-annual, annual, whenever you'd like. What they're saying is that you have to get the healthy practice of and habit of accurate self-appraisal. I think it's good that he put the word accurate in here. Once it's healthy practices become grooved, part of you. Absolutely, you can't skip it over. You know, if you play a record, you skip the groove, it goes, well, that's exactly what starts to happen to you spiritually if you start to skip around and you miss something. You'll feel it, it will hurt. It becomes grooved. It will be so interesting. And this groove is a groove into your spiritual memory. It's a groove into a memory you were born with that we talked about yesterday. The memory you were born with. It's a groove back in there so that you're back to where you were born, where you came in. You came in with all the knowledge of all there is. The great reality deep within came in with it all. They want you back in the groove. Listen to the music of your own soul. For those minutes and sometimes hours spent in self-examination. Now, I like that they put minutes in there. Because when you're walking down the street, when you're driving through a stoplight, when you're in the airport terminal, when you've missed the plane, whatever it is, those minutes require the same amount of effort and peace as hours of self-examination. You should be able to do that in minutes, seconds. 1, 2, 3, 12 seconds. You should be able to go through the 12 steps. Second a step. And this will all make sense in a minute on the next step, at the end our inventories become a regular part of our everyday living rather than something unusual and set apart. That's why I'm always surprised when people talk about these inventories as though, hey, I did one, never do another one. Or, hey, every couple of years. Every day, a couple of minutes a day. I want to be current. If I'm not current, I'll pile that stuff up, and then I'll blame you for it, and we're all off again. It is a spiritual axiom that every time we are disturbed, no matter what the cause, there is something wrong with us. I'm afraid on the next page he actually contradicts himself and says that the fault may be elsewhere. But right away, once you're really disturbed here, that the fault is completely with you. And I understand that. And then it goes on to what that means. And then it says, few people have been more victimized by resentments than we alcoholics. It mattered little whether our resentments were justified or not. Yesterday we talked about real and imagined fears. Same thing. I mean, to be an alcoholic, to have to live out there as a drunken woman, believe me, you have to have a lot of defenses. So you're going to come up with a lot of familiar behavior patterns that are just part of the nature of who you become. You've got to undo all of those as soon as you get sober. They don't go away when you put the cap on the bottle. And they're all old ideas. And they have to be replaced with something brand new. As we saw it, our wrath was justified most of the time. Anger, that occasional luxury of more balanced people. Well, I don't know when you get that balance, because I have certainly, in all the years I've been sober, and you're probably the same, have not had enough balance to enjoy the luxury of anger. I just am not that balanced. It hasn't worked for me. More balanced people could keep us on an emotional jag indefinitely. These emotional dry benders. Now, again, they're talking about the same thing as before. Negative thoughts, soul sickness, these dry benders can lead to the bottle. When you're sober a long time and you're not drinking, well, can it lead to a bottle? Certainly. A bottle of loneliness, a bottle of depression, a bottle of separation from God, a bottle of desperation, a bottle of anxiety, a bottle of irritation, discontent, all of those things. I mean, really, the symbology of the bottle for all of us is so powerful. I mean, you take a negative thought and you let it get a little out of hand. It's like taking 1 sip, 2 sips. It's the froth on the glass. When you see that glass and it's sweating, those negative thoughts, and you drink them, that's what's happening. You've got to say, this glass is sweating, negative thoughts. I can't do that. I don't want to go there. The consideration of long-standing difficulties, fourth step material. I mean, if you're doing a 10-step and the same stuff comes up each and every single solitary time, that's a hint. In such case, they suggest that you set some time aside deliberately for that purpose. The quick inventory is aimed at our daily ups and downs. And by the way, every day that you have a down, it's a new down. And the big book talks about new mistakes. So if you're down today, it's new. You let it back in. You drank that drink. You brought it back. Especially those where people are new events, throw us off balance and tempt us to make mistakes. I think that's such a gentle way of saying that you become resentful, enraged, and crazy. Tempt you to make a new mistake. Something will throw us off balance and tempt us. Wonderful. I'm only tempted if I'm pausing. If I forget the 10th part, I'm right down your throat. In all these, that's why the 6th step has become the the catalyst, the big step for me, because it requires me to go back to the sixth step 1,000,000 times. I go back to the sixth step so I can accept myself, and the minute I accept myself, I have begun to use my willpower to cooperate with God, because that's the step where it said, the words that changed my life in AA, cooperate with God. Never kind of got that. I kind of thought, this God thing, well, whoever that God is must be in charge. I never thought about cooperating with anybody in charge. I'm Irish, I'm alcoholic, it would never enter my mind to cooperate. You know, authority or not authority. There was never a middle of the road. You know, it's the IRA. They're going to do it my way or we're going to kill you. There's just no two ways about it, you know. And here they're asking for negotiation and cooperation. I mean, geez, a whole new attitude. So I always go back to 6 so that I can cooperate with God and I can accept myself and I can allow God in. We shall look for progress, not perfection. Progress, not perfection. What is that? That is humility. Then they talk about restraint, self-restraint. They give a whole big paragraph with a lot of stuff here about this self-restraint. They talk about restraint of tongue and pen, just in case you don't think it includes everything. We must avoid quick-tempered criticism and furious, power-driven arguments. The same goes for sulking or silent scorn. These are the emotional booby traps baited with pride and vengefulness. Our first job is to sidestep the traps. Pause is how you sidestep a trap. Don't go there. When we are tempted by the bait, we must train ourselves to step back and think. Isn't that incredible? Practice the spiritual memory. Get in the groove that they talked about a minute ago. For we can neither think nor act to good purpose until the habit of self-restraint has become automatic. They promise you in the big book, it's too bad we couldn't correlate them because it's a fantastic experience, but they promise you in the big book that you will have a highly developed sixth sense, an intuitive sense around this step here. And really what they mean by become automatic is that sixth sense, that intuitive sense, that practice, that spiritual memory of who you really are has been and will be restored more and more and more, and you will be able to go there so that most of the time you will pause. If you practice it, you will naturally pause. It will be the significant change in your life. It will affect you physically, emotionally, and spiritually in a major way. I became physically more healthy when I learned to pause. And then they talk about self-control, not too different than self-restraint. The other way that I pause is to say 1, 2, 3. That's when I'm really in good shape. Powerless, power, decision. 1, 2, 3. When I'm really strung out and I'm really afraid, something's going to happen and I'm powerless over it. The only thing that works for me in the pause, to activate the pause, is the Serenity Prayer. There's no mistake in my mind that the Serenity Prayer follows the 3rd step in the 12 and 12 and follows the 12th step in the 12 and 12 and is so frequently used throughout Alcoholics Anonymous. And the thing that always works when I pause, and to keep me paused and keep me still, to help me, is to say, help me, help me, help me, help me. Many, many times. Of course I have a new idea attached to that help me because I'm used to doing it year after year. But there's many times standing in front of that where I have the greatest pain, or hearing something I don't want to hear, or getting information I don't want to have. All I'm saying to myself while I'm listening to it is help me, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me. And the more I say it, the more I fill up. I kind of feel this kind of energy. I don't feel like I'm alone. You know, they say the grace of God will never take you where the grace of God cannot keep you. And there's a saying that I never get right, Jane, and that is that the force behind you, what is that thing about the force behind you? That's it. The force behind you is equal to the task in front of you. And I asked for it. Help, 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 help. At first, I didn't ask because I didn't always know it was going to happen. But now I believe in miracles and I expect miracles. And every time I ask and say, help, help, help me, help me, help me, help me enough, that the task in front of me is equal to the force behind me, that I will never be taken anywhere where the grace of God will not protect me, I expect that to happen. I just expect it. I don't even have left in me a non-expectation of that. By the way, It's the only expectation I have ever had in my life where I have never been disappointed. Now that we're in AA and sober, and winning back the esteem of our friends and business associates, we find that we need to exercise special vigilance. Eventually that's going to lay the groundwork for the 11th step and the conscious contact. In the meantime, it just tells you to try to pause as much as possible. Slow things down. Take your time. Where are you going? You were dying when you got here. You were at the end of the road. Every step you take's free. Why rush? It's a gift. What are we in a hurry for? We're people that were given an opportunity to smell the roses. What do? We get sober. We run out there. We forget all about the roses. If we're lucky, like me, years later, you find out, Jesus, I almost missed it. As insurance against big shotism, we can often check ourselves by remembering that we are sober today only by the grace of God, and that any success we may have is far more His success than ours. Finally, we begin to see that all people, including ourselves, are to some extent emotionally ill, as well as frequently wrong. And then we approach true tolerance and see what real love for our fellows actually means. It will become more and more evident as we go forward that it is pointless to become angry, or to get hurt by people who, like us, are suffering from the pains of growing up. Such a radical change in our outlook will take time, maybe a lot of time. Not many people can truthfully assert that they love everybody. We AAs find we need something much better in order to keep our balance. Our balance, again, is the sexual, social, and security instincts. We can't stand it if we hate deeply. The idea that we can be possessively loving of a few, can ignore the many, and continue to fear or hate anybody has to be abandoned, if only a little at a time. That was the beginning of the door of compassion opening for me, to become entirely ready to accept that. Whenever we fail any of these people, we can promptly admit it, to ourselves always and to them also, when the admission would be helpful. It's relentless now that this is so important. Is there a greater sin against another human being than to give them information that can harm them and to take away their spirit and their peace? It says here, if you don't know what and when in doubt, it says, when in doubt, we can always pause, saying, not my will, but thine be done. And we often ask ourselves the question. Now, when I ask myself, I ask my God, am I doing to others as I would have them do to me today? What more can I do? What can I do about the situation? Is there anything I can do? How do I handle it? How can I be of service? What do you want me to do? Because what I think I want to do doesn't feel really right. This is the good place to remember that inventory taking is not always done in red ink. It's a poor day indeed that we haven't done something right. Even when we have tried hard and failed, we may chalk that up as one of the greatest credits of all. When I look at the people around me who are dying from this disease, perhaps in their own way, I have to say they too are doing the best they can do. Perhaps this is the greatest credit I can do, is to love them for their effort. Under these conditions, the pain of failure are converted into assets. Out of them, we receive the stimulation we need to go forward. How heartily we AAs can agree with him, for we know that the pains of drinking had come before sobriety and emotional turmoil before serenity. As we glance down the debit side of today's ledger, we should carefully examine our motives, the nature of our wrongs. Our character will change every single solitary sober day. The nature of who we are will change every single solitary day. The more you practice the spiritual application of the 12 steps, the more old ideas you get rid of, the more new ideas you receive and activate on. You're a new person. Do you know who you are? Do you know where you're going? In most cases, our motives won't be hard to see and understand. And then they go on to talk about jealousy, anxious, fearful, and we act accordingly. And let me see. Here we only need recognize that we did act or think badly. To recognize something is to accept that you see it and then make it your own. If you make it your own, you won't do it. Try to visualize how we might have done better. Description of humility. It's all over the book. Then they talk about rationalization and how you know the difference between, for me now, I'll just skip this part because it talks about all the things that happen if you do rationalize, how you can constructively criticize somebody and telling them, thinking that they need it, or you feel superior, or you want to punish them, and it says the odd trait of mind and emotion and getting extra attention, and, you can read all of that, but all of these things that examples of what go wrong. Sometimes I honestly don't know, so I have to pause and I have to ask, what do I do? How would you like me to do it? Should I do it? When should I do it? Do you think I should make that phone call? Should I not make that phone call? Should I go there? Is there anything I've forgotten? Do I have to do this? The greatest question I ever asked is, do you really exist? Will you reveal yourself to me? I need to know. I need to know. I ask questions about everything. Learning daily to spot, admit, and correct. 4, 5, 6. What's the fear? Talk to somebody about it. Stop it. 4, 5, 6. These flaws is the essence. Learning daily to spot, admit, correct these flaws is the essence of character building and good living. An honest regret for harms done, 8 and 9. A genuine gratitude for blessings received, 12. And a willingness to try for better things tomorrow, humility. Whenever you're trying for better things, it's a humility. It's a humbling experience. It is humility. Don't be embarrassed by having humility. It's the water, the air by which we breathe, are the permanent assets we seek. Having so considered our day, not omitting to take due note of things well done, and having searched our hearts with neither fear nor favor, we can truly thank our God for the blessings we have received and sleep in good conscience. When I go to bed at night, I consider my day. Dear Great Spirit, few little things that are on my mind, whatever they are. And then I say, what, when, where, why, how, should I? Do you want me to? When do you think I should? Maybe I shouldn't. What do you think I should do? Question, 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 question. Big things, little things, nothing. Thank you. I need and love you. Thank you for my sobriety. Lila. In the trash. Transmit it. It is gone. I particularly make sure that I don't go to sleep with any worry or judgment on my mind. And then I believe that when I do go to sleep, since they mentioned sleep, receive and sleep in good conscience, that is where I receive my greatest spiritual counsel. It's when I am sound asleep. People used to say, that they had dreams about, in bright colors and flying and all kinds of things. I never had dreams like that. I think, I probably took all those dream cells and drunk them out or something. But in the last few years, I have dreamt in vivid color, fly everywhere. It's just been an extraordinary thing, because I have come to believe that just because I go to sleep, that the spiritual universe has not shut down. That the 24 hours really are operating all the time in this infinity. And I just go to sleep, and I'm closer when I sleep. I'm available when I'm asleep. I have magnificent understanding when I sleep. I walk with the angels when I sleep. All the questions. I remember when I was running a business, took over a business, and really had a very sincere desire to grow that business, and it grew really quickly, and a lot of great people helping me. But there was so much I didn't know, and God, it was huge business, and grew and grew and grew, but I didn't really know. And here I was responsible for the livelihood of so many people, and so much I didn't know. And I would go to bed at night and I would ask questions about those things, and I would say, now look, I need the best legal mind up there. I need the biggest financial guy, and I need this, and I need that, and I need this, and I would say exactly what I needed. And so help me God, somehow, some way, I would know. I would get on the plane and I would either know or somebody would sit beside me and they would tell me exactly what it was. Or somebody would say, did you know that so-and-so is ready to leave so-and-so? And maybe if you talk to him, he might want to come work for you. And he was just that guy. And I began to notice those kind of things. Now, they've been going on, those kind of things, since the day I arrived on Earth. I just never noticed. I never noticed. I never knew you could ask for help. I never knew there was anybody to help me. I don't know what you got from your glass of scotch. But I got the message, drink me and I will help you. Drink me and we will be all we'll ever need together. Drink me and I will be the greatest spiritual experience you have ever had. Drink me and I will bring you into a state of total unconsciousness. You will never have a trouble. And then it didn't work anymore. How disappointing. I had such expectations. I had expectations for the rest of my life. The rest of my life. Well, now I have found something that I can go to, and it has never failed me. And not only does it not provide the answer readily, it's bigger every single solitary time. I mean, it went from just talking to Duke Carson in the back corner of the hole in the ground in Huntington Park, shaking like a leaf, trying not to throw up in the guy's new shoes. Thinking, well, this guy can help me for the next 3 weeks anyway till I get the hell out of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then it went to like the woman that ended up sponsoring me. I thought, well, oh God, maybe I can trust her, then she can help me. And then it went to becoming involved with people where I got some best friends. I thought, wow, they can help me. And then I graduated to helping somebody else. And I thought, you know what? This feels really good. We can help each other. And then I graduated to God. And the God has changed so many times and in so many ways, and been angels and been not and anything. Tangible things at the beginning that I could feel. I couldn't deal directly with a God. It was just, I couldn't do it. So I had a 6-foot-tall angel with these giant monstrous wings. The one from the little picture that we discussed yesterday that took me across the bridge. I just thought, well, I need that angel now more than I've ever needed her. I'm not going to make the sobriety gig. And, I'm having a hard time. And this giant big angel took it everywhere. In the car. I remember walking around this company as it was growing saying, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me. And one day it was particularly stressful. And we were having a great big meeting with a number of people. And it was really important. It was really important. And, I'd forgotten that it's not important at all. But I thought it was really important. And I thought, gee, I need help. So I brought this great big angel into the room with me. And it was a very tight boardroom. All the chairs were... we got a problem. And I had a very important place at the table across from the gentleman that we were doing business with. And the chairs were too close. And I actually said to the person that worked with me, my right arm, I said, you're going to have to move your chair a little further away. She said, what are you talking about? I said, Linda, just trust me on this. You've got to give me a little more room. On the right. I don't know what it is about the right thing. It must be the Catholic thing. I don't know. I just couldn't afford for that angel to be constricted in any way. And then I told her later what I was doing. She said, Jesus, it really worked. I said, yeah. So here we are, the Catholic and the Jew going to all these board meetings. We're loading the room up with angels. She said, I don't care, put yarmulke on. So I went from an angel to something that I can't define, can't see, can't believe would limit itself to a sex or an identity or a space. Something so big that, and in and out of the roller ride of searching and looking and wondering, who are you? What are you? So every now and then I ask. And from that I've been able to talk to, people that have gone on. Talk to my brother and talk to my uncles and talk to my grandmother. Talk to them. Incredible how far you can come from sitting in the back room, some old clubhouse, a drunk, trying to hold on so you don't throw up, hoping to God that this guy can really help you, trusting for the first time in your life, I need help. Amazing. Can't believe you even said it. And suddenly you're running around saying, hey, welcome to Tulsa, to my uncle, as I mentioned yesterday, who passed away in the morning we left Los Angeles. Never been to California, would never fly that far, Here now. Tremendous. So big, so endless, so huge. I don't deny myself anything anymore. If somebody says, I talked to 3 bricks in a row and something happens to me, I would think, first I'd judge them. Then I'd catch myself. Then I would accept that I don't know anything about that and that maybe I'm wrong. And I'd be the first one over there to see if I could feel anything. And I found that my mind is that of perception and belief. I've come to believe almost anything as a result of practicing the second step of the program of alcoholism. Almost anything. I'd be the first one to say, yeah, hey, you know what? I think I feel something from that thing. Does it matter how you reflect back to the light of God? Be it from 3 bricks in a wall, a statue, a church, rosary beads, it doesn't matter what it is. What it is. So I have no problem anymore with religion, and I had a very big problem. I'm grateful that my mother is so devout and that she has it. The holy water when you walk in the door. I'm very glad about all that. It is not my way, but I have great respect for everybody's way. I just accept that it all works. So the 10th step is tremendous, and that peace comes from the room in Huntington Park to deep in my sleep. Can you imagine that journey? Can you imagine that journey? Unafraid to ask anyone. Grateful for and also in this step, it was the time around the 10th step in this pausing and staying still and entering into a place of peace and learning to just expand my consciousness to include anything that might work. In a yoga class I was once with Betsy Riordan, and she's gone on now. She was so helpful to me. Everybody was an angel in my life. We are the better nature of our angels, as I believe somebody says once, when we share with one another. That's who we talk to. That's why we can put up with one another. Because the better nature of who I am is talking to the better nature of who you are, and we like each other, and we love each other. We don't know how not to. It is only when we get human about that where we mess things up. What is it that saying is? I am not a human being trying to be spiritual. I'm a spiritual being trying to be human. And have not been eloquent at it. But in yoga class, they tell you that you are to surrender. Betsy, here she was, she must have been 80, and I was young at that time, and not even 30, and she was sober a million years, and I was I don't know how old I was, sober. And we're in this yoga class, and she is twisted into 15 different knots, and I'm screaming in pain. And she said to me, Lila, it's just like AA. I said, what are you talking about? She said, surrender to the position, Lila. Surrender to the position. I said, what the hell has that got to do with AA? And she said, do not resist the pain. Do not resist the pain. Turn it over. Go to sleep. You will be healed while you're awake and asleep, particularly when you're asleep. Do not resist the pain. Surrender to the position. Accept it, and it will change. It was probably 20 years ago that she said that to me. Would you like a cup of coffee? Okay. Thank you, John. All right, step 11. I said that I was not going to refer to the big book, but it's impossible to begin to do anything in the 12 and 12 on step 11 without referring to page 46 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because in step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of God's will, His will for us, and the power to carry that out. It says in the big book, our own concept, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach into effective contact with Him. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. To us, the realm of the Spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It is open, we believe, to all men. I think that is so beautiful. I regret that we can't go through the big book. There's so much in the big book, but later on in the big book, a few pages later, around that period of time, they refer to God as friend. Can you imagine? Friend. The gentleness of that. A book written in 1935 or 1939, when the Christian principle was very, very powerful, that in our book for today, this book that now has been printed in so many languages and sent out all over the world and needs to have that broad, roomy interpretation, has things like creative intelligence, great reality, friend, powerful.